शङ्करं शङ्कराचार्यं केशवं बादरायणं सूत्रभाष्यकृतौ वन्दे भगवन्तौ पुनः पुनः। ईश्वरो गुरुरात्मेति मूर्तिभेदविभागिने व्योमवद्व्याप्तदेहाय दक्षिणामूर्तये नमः। गुकारस्त्वन्धकारो वै ऋकारस्त्वनिवर्तकः अन्धकारनिरोधित्वात् गुरुरित्यभिधीयते। सदाशिवसमारम्भां शङ्कराचार्यमध्यमाम् अस्मदाचार्यपर्यन्तां वन्दे गुरुपरम्पराम्। ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यङ्करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। ॐ आप्यायन्तु मम अङ्गानि वाक्प्राणश्चक्षुः श्रोत्रमथो बलमिन्द्रियाणि च सर्वाणि। सर्वं ब्रह्मा उपनिषदं माहं ब्रह्म निराकुर्याम् मा ब्रह्म निराकरोत्। अनिराकरणमस्तु अनिराकरणं मे अस्तु। तदात्मनि निरतेय उपनिषत्सु धर्माः ते मयि सन्तु। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। So we will begin with verse number 4 of the last chapter of Kena Upanishad. Kena Upanishad has 4 chapters, and we have already covered the first 3 and the first 3 verses of the last chapter. We have already finished that. So today we will look into the last of the 4th chapter, verses number 4 onwards, and with that the study of Kena Upanishad will be over. I think you have now a complete picture of what the concepts driving the Upanishads are and what the constituents of those concepts are. Kena Upanishad is a relatively more straightforward Upanishad and easier, and has really one topic that it doesn't have, like in the more complex Upanishads like Chandogya has many topics. Even Kathopanishad has many topics. Certainly Brihadaranyaka Upanishad has many topics, and so on. But Kena Upanishad is a relatively straightforward Upanishad, as I mentioned, and has really one topic. And that topic is exemplified in the 4th verse of this 3rd chapter, Pratibodha Viditam Matam. And so that is really the key verse of the whole Kena Upanishad. And the concept is that again instigated by my initial introduction, Praptasya Praptihi. And if you recall, we gave the example of the credit card lost or seemingly lost. And the concept is that even when it appears to be, even if my status as the very content of Ishvara, the very content of of Brahman, which is me, where I don't deny myself as the unlimited being, even as that is appears to be very difficult to see. If you look at it the right way, it is really not that difficult because it is very close to you. And you cannot miss it if you look at it the right way. And so this is the central concept of the Kena Upanishad. It's instigated by the very first verse, which says, "Who is making my mind work? Who is responsible for the pranas? How are they all functioning?" So this itself is a very advanced question, because it doesn't appear to us if the mind works, if the prana works, so what? What's the big thing? They're just working. But in fact, it is exactly like someone who is dealing with a number of appliances, and in the beginning, you don't have the question about how does this thing appliance works. But if you really if you think about it, then the question appears: how does this appliance work? What makes it work? In one of the exams of the UPSC in India, after you graduate from college, and if you wanted to get a kind of a government job, then you apply for this exam called UPSC, Class 1, Class 2, Class 3. And so there you have the written exams, and you also have Viva Voce, where you have to have a verbal things that people will ask you for that. I'm sure that many of you might have gone through. Certainly I did. And I still remember some of the questions that they asked. And I remember one question which one of the examiners asked me. He said, "Did you ever design a circuit?" And I said, "Yes, some simple ones." And this was one of the problems we had in our engineering college, because it was really mostly theoretical teaching, and there wasn't a lot of practical work. In IITs, that is not the case. You have to really do all of that. But in this BIT, Bihar Institute of Technology, it was a new college, and the labs were not set up. The teachers, anyway, I'm not complaining, or whatever happens. But I really never really had a chance to make a circuit work. And so we did some initial analysis. So one of the examiners asked me, he said, "Did you ever find out why your circuit was not working?" And I had to be very honest with him, and I said, "No, sir. I was curious, but in the amount of time that we had, I didn't do that." And so this sense of inquiry as to how the appliances work is a very advanced one. And so the most beautiful examples of the appliances in our life is the way our life's experiences are. Because it's a very sophisticated set of equipment that is working in our lives. My body, mind complex, and so on. Highly sophisticated. I was reading a book recently by Swami Maheshananji, and he says, Ishvara is known to be, we all know Ishvara as being an artist. That you have this beautiful, the very nature, how it works. It's a very beautiful thing. But he says what is not appreciated, which it should be appreciated, is that the world is an engineering feat. It is a marvel of engineering. And in fact, in Ishvara's mind, we have seen this. Vishwakarma is supposed to be the Ishvara's architect. And so, Ishvara is not as though everybody is just a delegated part of Ishvara. But Ishvara as an architect is called Vishwakarma. And so it's an engineering feat. So really all my experiences are appliances. And but we don't really, so the very first question of Kena Upanishad really just worth just going through. Kene shitam patitam, what does it say? Kene shitam patati, sorry, not patitam. Kene shitam patati preshitam manaha. Kena pranav prathama praiti yuktaha. Kene shitam vacham imam vadanti chakshuhu shrotram kau devo yunakti. So this means that a very advanced student who has suddenly become very thoughtful. This is like an engineering student who does not accept all the appliances as they are, but they wants to know how they function. And so this is the central theme, is that if you start inquiring as to how the appliances of my life function, by whom, you reach Ishvara very quickly. This is the method of inquiry. And it appears like I cannot know where it is, I cannot see it, I have no idea, because the only thing that I have in my ability to think is my mind. And my mind cannot see Atma. It is the product of Atma. The product cannot see the cause itself. It's like the flashlight cannot see the batteries. So an outside source has to say, sir, it's like a flashlight asking, I'm lighting things up. And I wonder what's causing me to light up things. What is the basic cause? I can't see it. I have inquired everything. All I can see is things that I light up. But I cannot see the cause of my lighting it up. Cannot see it. So the Shastra has to come in and say, Shrotrasya Shrotram Manaso Manaha. Yad vachoha vacham sahu pranasya prana. And then it just continues the analysis and it ends with this Mahavakya, which is the, I think I may have said the third chapter. It is the fourth verse of the second chapter. That's the Mahavakya. That is where the culmination is. And that is what we saw. Pratibodha viditam matam amritatvam hi vindate atmana vindate viryam vishaya vidyaya vindate amritam. He says, don't you know that really all thoughts are powered by the electricity called the Atma? Can't you see it? It's like somebody else telling the flashlight, it is your, it's called ever-ready battery. There used to be this ad where it never runs out. What is it? It was like a rabbit that keeps on working. Here, this is the ultimate battery. This is a very beautiful thing to see. Atma is the ultimate battery. Why do we say it's the ultimate battery? Because in life we have batteries that can power a flashlight. But the battery itself is dependent on certain components. And after a while, those batteries wear out. So it's not an ultimate battery. Atma, on the other hand, and this is why it is difficult to see, because if I can see my Atma also becoming weaker and weaker and weaker, then I could say that my Atma used to be strong, now it is weak. It doesn't happen that way. It is so constant that it becomes invisible. You see? Our mind can only see things that are changing. You cannot see things that just is there all the time. So this is the battery, the ultimate battery. Anyway, so this is the central theme of Kena Upanishad. Again, what is the central theme? That what appears to be very difficult is actually right next to you. You think you have lost your credit card. No, you haven't. If you just think about it correctly, it's around here somewhere. This is the central theme. And the entire Upanishad is dedicated to focusing on this one central theme very well. And as you know, in the third chapter, this concept that really you are the very cause of all your experiences is illustrated in the name of a story. And the concept of the story is that even Devatas don't know this. They also thought that, we beat these asuras, we are great people, and it's all because of our hard work and so on. Not realizing that you are just an appliance. Here, Swami Maheswaranji had pointed out that, you have this, you have the drums being played, dholak in Hindi, drums that are played. And there are different kind of drums. In Indian we have tabla. So we have the two tablas. Then in South India we have a single mridangam. And here, for example, we have lots of little drums that can be played. And so Swami Maheswaranji says, look, if you see the sound of the drum, and a very well done drum, you really enjoy it. Now the question is, who is the doer of the drum? Is it the drum itself that makes the noise? No. The drum in the hands of a conscious person makes the beautiful sound. I used to drive my parents crazy, and I would just be drumming all the time. And so my mother will say, enough. And I would say, please, look at all the patterns that I'm doing. They'll say, good, but please, that's enough. So really the question is, who is making all these beautiful sounds? It is a conscious person. The drum by itself cannot do it. This is exactly what our life is. My hands, my eyes, my equipment, my personal appliances are really played by a conscious Atma, which is nothing but Parameshvara. So this is was this fact was not even known, that really we won. We won. We are the Devatas. See how powerful we are and how good we are, and we all banded together. And here one on this story, there is a very famous is a famous difference between Devatas and Asuras. And so this in the Puranic stories, this happens all over the place. To differentiate between the good and the bad, these things are presented in the form of stories, Purana stories. So it appears that there was one time the Devatas and the Asuras both approached Brahmaji and said, Brahmaji, we need Amritam so that we don't have to die. We become immortal. And we are willing to do all the efforts to make all that happen. Whatever you want us to do, we will do it. So Brahmaji said, okay, all right, here's what you need to do. Both. So there were two parties. There's the Devatas on one side and the Asuras on the other side, the good and the bad. And they were both doing the same yajnas to achieve Amritam, Amritatvam. And so as the story goes, the Amritatvam there was a nectar in a cup that you have to drink. And if you drink that, then you become immortal. So Brahmaji said, here is the nectar. And he gave it to both sides. And he says, oh, by the way, there is one condition. And what is that condition? You cannot bend your elbows when you are drinking the nectar. So they said, oh, okay, no problem. Oh, that's okay, that's fine. So now the Asuras were given the same nectar. But then they had to observe this condition that you cannot bend your elbows when you are giving the nectar. And now they're saying, now how is that going to happen? And so they don't trust each other. So this is the problem. They have a sense of, this is me. I can do all of the efforts to obtain nectar, but I have a certain ahankara. This is the thing. This me is the one that distinguishes between the Devatas and Asuras. Same thing happened in the Ramayana, that Rama and Ravana were both Shiva Bhaktas, and both were given extreme amount of power. But in one case, Rama abdicated his own personality to the Ishvara. But Ravana collected all to himself and said, I am a very powerful being. So here, going back to the story, so the Asuras, they said, this is not going to happen. Because people said, okay, why don't you give me a little bit and then I'll give it to you also. So they said, no, we don't trust you. We know what character you have, and I don't trust you. There's only a little bit left. And what if you drink it all and you don't give it to me? No. Or they will say, you do it first, you do it first. Devatas, on the other hand, said, this is an easy condition to meet. I will feed you the Amritam and you feed me the Amritam with your hands, and both of us don't bend our elbows. Kaam ho gaya. All finished. Done. So the Devatas also have to discover the Ishvara. So the whole story in the third chapter is not easy to find out. This is one story. Now we come to the end of, this is one part of the story, not one story, but this is one part of the story, that the Devatas had to be told by Uma, fools, you should understand that I know you you claim you won the victory, but you know who made it work? Who was the person who was responsible? Yaksha. More powerful than you. In fact, you are powerful because of him. And they said, oh my God, we didn't realize that. So this is the story. Now there's a small part of the story which is now being taken up in the end, towards the end of the fourth chapter. And that starts with verse number 4 of the fourth chapter. It says, Tasya esha adeshaha yat etat vidyuttaha avidyat. Is a kind of difficult verse. So here's why this is. I can interrupt it by, I didn't complete the verse. So Kena Upanishad is from the Samaveda. Samaveda. You know you should, I think that's something that it'll be good for you to know, that out of the 10 principal Upanishads, called principal because Adi Shankara have commented on them, out of these 10 Upanishads, there are strewn across the 4 different types of Vedas. So for example, in the Rig Veda, there's only one Upanishad called Aitareya Upanishad. Then in the Krishna Yajurveda, there is Katha Upanishad and Taittiriya Upanishad. Those are the 2 principal Upanishads. In the Shukla Yajurveda, the white, the Krishna is the black, and the white in the Shukla Yajurveda is the Brihadaranyaka and Ishavasya Upanishad. So for example, it's interesting, this book that I was citing to you called Rudram. So Rudram is an important set of mantras that appears in more than one Upanishad. Usually that doesn't happen. You may have some small segments that are repeated, but not the whole Rudram itself. But in Rudram's case, you have a version on Krishna Yajurveda and a Shukla Yajurveda. And so, like we chant Shukla Yajurveda, we chant the Rudram from the Krishna Yajurveda. And so that's what we have been taught by Swami Dayanand Ji and so on. And the people in the south usually chant from the Krishna Yajurveda. The people from the north are much more fond of Shukla Yajurveda. So in the case of our Katha Upanishad, in the case of Rudram, the sequence of verses are different. Many times the same verses are there, but the sequences are different. So in Swami Maheshananji's case, he gives both of them. So he will say, in Krishna Yajurveda, this is what comes first. Shukla Yajurveda, this comes first. The other one comes second. So there are some small differences. But they are there. That's why Rudram, being so common in multiple Vedas, is considered to be, this is what called Shatarudriya. And we will take that up. I'm very hopeful that in one of those cases, I'm going to take the Rudram again. We did it about 8-9 years ago, but even my understanding was not as clear about it as it is hopefully now. And I would like to take Rudram one more time. Anyway, going back to our listing of the various Upanishads and the various Vedas, the Shukla Yajurveda has Brihadaranyaka and Ishavasya Upanishad. In Samaveda, it is Kena and Chandogya. And in the end, Atharva Veda has Mundaka, Mandukya, and Prashna Upanishad. So this is the listing. So the reason that triggered my thought is that the Samaveda is sung. It has actually notes. If those of you, if you've ever heard Samveda being chanted, it has its own distinct tone. Ah, ooh, ah, ooh, ah, ooh, like that. It has different kind of tones. So here, in this one, you see the letter 3. So that means that you have to lengthen the pronunciation in 3 matras. So it should, I don't know, I have not heard, I don't remember Swamiji chanting it. It was so far back, so I'm not sure of it, but it'll be something like Etad Vidyuto Vyadut A Iti Ijyamim Ijya Iti A Nyamishat. I don't know, it's difficult to pronounce. Anyway, all I wanted to say was that this A is lengthened twice. It Adidaivatam. Okay. Anyway, that's the verse. Now there is a purpose for giving these verses in this form at the end of Kenopanishad. And here is the purpose. So here starts the real reason for taking this up. And so, as you know, that each human being has 3 kinds of experiences which are signified by the 3 kinds of Shanti. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. We do that 3 times. And the reason for that is that each of us has 3 kinds of experiences that we go through. So one is called Adi Daivatam. One is called Adi Bhutam. And the last one is called Adhyatmam. Adi Daivatam, Adi Bhutam, and Adhyatmam. I think many of you already know this. So, Adi Bhutam, let's look at the Adi Bhutam first, are experiences that you interact with visible things in front of you, or that will come later on in your life. So all of your normal experiences with people, with things, with both Jada as well as Chaitanya reflecting. People are Chaitanya reflecting. Tables and cars, etc. are Jada reflecting. But they are all things that you are experiencing in your life. And you have a certain relationship with them, and they also can cause you certain problems. They can give you happiness, they can also give you problems. So these set of experiences that are done by the bhutas. Bhutas means really means bhautikas, which are the result of the combination of the various bhutas. Akasha, Vayu, Teja, Agni, etc. Their combinations produce bhautikas. And so those are visible to you and they are continuous, and those are called Adi Daivat, Adi Bhutam. Then there are things that appear to be caused not by people but by forces that are very strong and we don't know where they're coming from. And those have to do with lightning, which is what is expressed here. And I'll come to the importance of why lightning. Then you have all of the external forces, floods, not caused by people, but like in Chennai these days, I understand there is continuous raining and so much flooding. It is not done by the local rivers or anything, but it is all coming from Akasha, all the rains. Earthquakes, fire. So this is what is called Adi Daivatam. Adi Bhutam, Adi Daivatam. And the third one is Adhyatmam. That means that these are all internal and specific to yourself. Your body gives problems. They are of course all interrelated. But the primary source of your issues is your own body-mind complex. Your mind. All of a sudden some dark thought comes and you become depressed for no reason. This is all internal to you. No one else is bothering you. Bhagwan is okay, Devatas are okay, but somehow or the other you woke up with a bad mood. Adhyatma, or stomachache, headache, fever, all kinds of problems. This is called Adhyatma. Okay? Now, what is being said here is, this is what is called Adesha. So this is explained by Swami Maheshananji in the Anubhuti Prakasha, in this book by Swami Vidyaranya on this Kena Upanishad. When I was reviewing that, it just explains. I had not really understood this very well. He says Adesha is Upadesha with a illustration. That's the subtle difference between the word Upadesha, which we are all familiar with. Upadesha means teaching. Some verbal teaching or written teaching doesn't matter, but generally verbal teaching is called Upadesha. And the element that creates these words is called Dish. Dish means to show. So Upadesha means the one that shows you very close to yourself. It's called Upadesha. Adesha is a special form of Upadesha where an illustration is used to ease the Upadesha. It's called Adesha. So here, if you look at the very first two words of verse number 4, it says, Tasya esha adeshaha. Tasya esha adeshaha. So tasya means what? Because what is the noun behind? It's just like Brahma Sutra. What is the principal vastu behind the Upanishad? Brahman. So tat means a pronoun, means that of that person. Of which person? Brahmas, Atmas. Tasya esha adeshaha. He says that the teaching is in this form of illustration. That is the meaning of it. What is the illustration? It says, Yat edat vidyuto vyadyuttaha. Vidyutaha. Vyadyuttat vidyutaha. Means the flash of lightning, flash of lightning. Okay, so this is which kind of an illustration, which segment will it be? Adi Daivatam. Adi Daivatam. The others will come later on, but this is an illustration with respect to celestial, out of the world events like lightning. Lightning is a very interesting thing, very powerful thing. How it all of a sudden, I don't know if you remember in the Bay Area last year, there was dry lightning one day. There wasn't even a rain. I've never experienced something like this. And lightning that was so prevalent in the whole area. How many hundreds, possibly thousands of strikes of lightning, creating so many fires that in fact we were ready to vacate. I spent 2 hours collecting all the family photographs and important papers and so on. We had them in the trunk of the car because the Santa Cruz fire was coming closer, and there was concerns on everybody's part that this can happen very quickly. Where we live, we don't have a lot of exit points. There's only 2 or 3, so we have to be very careful. And we came that close to leaving when in fact was called off. And so this was lightning. And oh my God, what a sight used to be. There was lightning all over the place, very powerful. Now, what is the illustration here is that the lightning can be visible very quickly and disappears very quickly. As you know very well, in the darkness of the night, you don't see anything. It's completely dark, and all of a sudden, for a split second, the whole thing becomes so lighted, as though it is the daytime. And before you even realize it, it's gone again. So this is the illustration which is being given as an adesha towards the vision of Brahman as yourself. So what it means is that as you study and as you become more and more convinced about, through all the study of the Pratibodha Viditam Matam, and then Atma is the very source, all of that, what you will see, this is the illustration, this is what needs to be paid attention to, is that there will be a time when the presence of Brahman as yourself will flash in front of you like lightning. Very clear. Yes. And that means that you don't, at that moment, you don't see yourself as a limited person. You don't see yourself as a product. You see yourself as the cause. And then, very quickly, this disappears. This idea that, my goodness, you're right. I know what I am. Unlimited. Self-sustaining. Swatasiddha. And it will come to you where you'll say, my gosh, I'm the same person, but I was never born. I have been this person ever since I took this life. Oh my goodness, that's me. And before you want to sustain it, it disappears. You become again as a householder, as a person, and you are hungry, thirsty, you are desiring things, and so on and so forth. So the darkness of your experience comes back. But if you if you if you really work at it and deserve it, the flash of like a flash of lightning, the presence of the infinite as nothing but yourself will be yours. And furthermore, this is the real reason for why this is being pointed out. If you have achieved a sense of wisdom, because if you have, it's very possible that these flashes are given to you. In fact, in the night time when we are deep asleep, these experiences are given to you continuously. But we are not aware of it, and when we come back, we don't recognize the importance of deep sleep. And so, even otherwise, it's very possible that this might have been given to you even if you are not a student. But you don't recognize it. You say, oh, there was some kind of a funny thing. Yeah, I felt good for a while. In fact, I would say this, that even in the daily life, Swami Dayanand used to say this. This is so beautiful what he said. He said, that really one of the most beautiful experiences of our life is having a full meal where all my desires go away for a while. And this is a fact. In fact, this is what happens when you have people who are having some restlessness, they're unhappy. They can overeat. Why? Because eating is the closest thing to what is called alam buddhi. Alam buddhi means I'm done. I don't need anything. In all other cases, I don't have alam buddhi. I don't have alam buddhi. I mean, for those of us that, sometimes I don't really, I used to be, when I retired first in the year 2000, I was doing a lot of my own money management. I thought that now I have the time and the knowledge. Then I said, this is very messy. I'm just going to give it to somebody and let them manage the money and so on. So I don't do much of it. But once in a while you hear about some good stock and then you buy it. This is what I was talking about, the alam buddhi. So this is like about 3 years ago, I bought NVIDIA. And so the NVIDIA was, I think I must have bought it at a very inexpensive price. And it did very well for a while. And much better than I expected. And then I sold it. I said, that's enough. Now it has gone up 3 times more than after I sold it. So I never could get alam buddhi on buying NVIDIA. But on eating, Swamiji says that there comes a point where you're completely satisfied and you don't want any more, even if somebody offers it to you. You don't want any more. You said alam buddhi. So at night time we also have alam buddhi, but we don't recognize it. So going back to this illustration, it's very possible that this lightning of a jolt can come to you without your even becoming wise. But you ignore it. You say, oh, there was some thought. If you are wise, then something different happens. And this is the illustration, a very important illustration, that when Indra went to the Yaksha disappears. At one moment it is there like lightning, and the next moment, as Indra approaches it, it becomes dark. And when Indra had some doubts and asked Uma, "What was that?" Uma said, "This is Brahman, your own self." Indra, after that, was never the same person. Why? Because he saw the presence of Brahman himself, he saw the absence of Brahman, but once having been introduced by Uma, he would never forget it. He won't say. So you see, if you are not wise, if you and I are not wise, what will happen is we will say, "What was that? I don't know what it was." And so you have somebody called a very wise person, he says, "My gosh, this is what it was." And you say, I don't know, I have my doubts. But if the wisdom has come to you by careful thinking, analysis, inquiry, interest, passion, shraddha, all of those things combined together, where you're serious about it, and when the flashing of the Brahman occurs, even if it disappears, it cannot disappear because it was there. It is there. So this is the illustration. This is the importance of this illustration. That listen, if you continue to think about it as to where Brahman is, where Atma is, what is the role of it, what is the difference between electricity and appliance, all of those things are done, viveka, vairagya, etc. Like a flash of lightning, that experience will come to you. And will disappear initially. And so that upasana, in order to clarify that vidya, will make it appear again and again. It will happen. But its presence is unmistakable if you are prepared to understand, like Indra was. This is what is taught in the Adesha. And in the second part of it, so in fact, let us look at the English translation of that in page 47. The following is the instruction through comparison. So that is what is called Adesha. Instead of Upadesha, it's called Adesha. Of that Brahman. This Brahman is comparable to the flash of lightning. And I would add to that, initially. And I would add to it, unmistakable. Yeah, I don't have to add unmistakably, because the flash of lightning reveals things. I don't know if you recall this or not, but about a year or two ago, I remember this illustration in one of Swami Maheshananji's teachings, where he said that, I don't know if you recall this or not, but that comes to me exactly the same thing, really. I'm just giving you another version of that. Let's see where we are in time. I'm losing track of 8:54. Okay, so we have some time. Pardon me. So Meshanji had given this illustration that suppose you go to a new place in the middle of the night, like you went to, you took a plane and you took a limo to a hotel on the outskirts of a town somewhere. I recall sometimes, when I would go on a business trip with HP, so I would go to a new place and be staying in a motel or a hotel somewhere, and I had no idea where it was. The driver just takes you there, and then you go to your room and you make the bed and you're just kind of looking around, and you don't know in the back of the room what the landscape looks like. Is it in the middle of a forest with a lot kinds of green things and so on? Or is it all paved roads and you are in a town? You don't know that. So you're looking at from a top window of the 6th floor or something, and you're looking out to the darkness. All of a sudden there is a lightning, because it's all dark. It's all dark in the middle of the night, so even if it's a town, there's no street lights, no nothing. And all of a sudden there is lightning. And in the flash of the lightning, you suddenly see the entire landscape in front of you, as though it was a daytime. And you could tell, yes, there are 2 buildings, and that's it. That's all the time you had, was just 2 buildings and a road, but the rest of it is all kind of like a woodsy area. You got that. The details of it you don't know. And then the lightning just flashed for a split second, enough for you to identify what the landscape looks like, and then then it's dark again. Swamiji said, will you not be, you don't know all the details of it, but you got a good idea of the whole thing, didn't you? Even though if it becomes dark. This is that same illustration. That really speaking, you will see the presence of Brahman, presence of Ishvara as yourself for a split second. And if you see that, and if you have the wisdom that you have arrived at after a long study and so on, that's all. You say, my goodness. Because it was there. It's not as though it's possible or anything. It is there. And then it doesn't matter. You have your experiences become like a limited being again. But you have this inner smile, and he says, I know what's going on. I'll be patient. So this illustration is to compare Brahman with the upasana of the Brahman, with the status of understanding as it comes, as a lightning. So the following is the instruction through comparison of that Brahman. The Brahman is comparable to the flash of lightning. This is the first instruction. And this Brahman is comparable to the winking of the eye. That is the second instruction. So the winking of the eye, how fast it is. How fast that occurs. And this is the Adi Bhautikam. The first one is Adi Daivam, and the other one is the Adi Bhautikam. And so there also you could just see in the flash of your eyes something. You see something fly past, and it just, I remember this, I'm just giving you this one example. So in the back of our backyard, there was this animal. I was sitting there, I think I might have told you this. Yeah, I think I was showing you this picture also. That I was sitting there and this animal just flashed by the window, and it had a very pointy nose and a mouth. I'd never seen anything like this from that close by. And he was looking at me for just a split second. Then he could realize that I'm so close, he ran away. And I never saw him again. I think later on I took a picture of him when he was, but at that moment, he just flash of a light. Of, but he was there, I could tell. I trusted my eyes. It's not as though I was saying, was I dreaming or what? No. So this is the second instruction. Then to end this is the next one, Atha Adhyatmam, number 5. So remember, we have already covered Adi Daivatam, Adi Bhautikam, Bhutam, and the third one is Atha Adhyatmam. Etat tat gacchati ivacha manoho anena upasmarati etat anena sat sankalpaha abhikshanam. This is a difficult verse, but I'll explain it to you as I understand it. Now follows the Adhyatma instruction. Instruction here means Adesha, means the comparison. The mind reveals as it were Brahman, and one remembers the Brahman through the mind and visualizes repeatedly. So, what it means is, similarly, if you are sitting down and doing your nididhyasanam, most of the time your thoughts will be as a limited jiva, as it will be, because we are so involved with our life, in our daily life of vyavahara, transactions and so on, that most of the thoughts that flash by the mind, where your mind is occupied, whether you like it or not, whether you will it or not, it's just going to happen. Your thoughts will be based on what needs to be done, what I forgot, I should have done this, why can't I do this, why all of those kinds of thoughts. But if you keep on doing upasana, once in a while, depends on your preparation and so on, you will get a flash of a thought about your sense of completeness. And then it will disappear. So the sense of coming together and disappearing is common through all the three. And that is what is illustrated in this example of Indra, who is one of the most accomplished devatas in the whole Swargaloka. Even he could see the yaksha for just a split second before it disappears. But you know what? That was enough for him. It was not enough for, actually, the disappearance did not take place for Agni and Vayu, because they were lesser devatas. And so their sense of doubt, who is this person? What is going on here? Something I don't understand. How come I could not even burn a blade of grass? I can burn whole galaxies. But here I could not even burn, there's something wrong. But instead of drawing some conclusions, their doubts engulf them, and he says, I don't know what's going on. Not for me to understand. Indra, on the other hand, with his wisdom and preparation, when he saw the disappearance of the yaksha right in front of his eyes, and then he got a confirmation of that from his guru, Uma said, that's right. That is Brahman who was responsible for your victory. Like a flash of his mind, the whole thing became clear to him. And even though the yaksha was gone and there was darkness, but he understood. So, this is what they say, that in the case of a Jivan Mukta, these are what will happen to us. If we continue to study, continue to inquire, you will see that even as you are participating in the world, the presence of the immortal flashing. Oh, it's back again. Okay. For a while I could see the red light flashing and perhaps it was cut off. So I wasn't sure, but it's back on again. So even as that happens, you will see that, and so therefore at that point on, what has to happen, and I won't finish the rest of it, I think these are the important things. The coming and going will get better. You pursue it, and in Swami Maheshananji's example, that even though you could now tell what the landscape is in the middle of the night by the flash of the lightning, you can go to sleep now, and when you wake up in the morning, you can get all the details. But the landscape has not gone away even though it is dark. It's the same landscape. Now it is continuously lighted. That's all that happens. So in the case of a Jivan Mukta, you will see that the presence of the immortal self, even as you are behaving as a Vyavaharika person, will never go away. In the first few instances, it will come and go. But then, through your own Shraddha, that it cannot go, this is me. Satyam Jnanam Anantam means that my own nature is Sat-Swarupa. How can it go anywhere? It is the very nature of the Sat. It is the nature of being everywhere. Sarva Vyapakaha. Isha Vasyam Idam Sarvam. Yat Kinchit Jagatyam Jagat. Will never go. And it will become a constant presence. But initially, it makes its presence felt as a flash of lightning, or like a flash of your eyes opening for a second. And as a flash of thought, adhyatma. In all three cases, the illustration is given as something that comes and goes. But that's for a wise, that's enough. That's it. You don't need to do anything more. So with that, there's a couple of other things about, you can please read Tasya Vanam. So some sadhanas are given. I won't go into that because the central theme has now been covered pretty well. And so with that, we complete the review of Kenopanishad and with that segment. So I'm very happy that we were able to do so. And for those of you that listen to the classes, I hope you got a good picture of what Kenopanishad is trying to teach us. So let me just say a prayer, and then I will open up for any questions that you may have. Om Asato Ma Satkamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityor Ma Amritam Gamaya Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnamevavashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om. Good, very nice to have you all. Balamani asks, when one sees Brahman in the split second, can one be absorbed and mingled with Brahman, or just memory stays in mind? So, so I think the way I would explain it is that when this occurs, see, normally you and I are experiencing the state of the mind. This is what my idea of who I am is, equal to the state of the mind. Now, the state of the mind is my reflection. It is not me. It's kind of looking at yourself in a body of water. And yes, it looks like you, but it is highly conditioned by the state of the water. Now, when this sort of a flash occurs, you see yourself as a pure vastu, not as a reflection of the vastu in your mind. So, in other words, your mind assumes, through the power of the instruction, the original rather than the reflection. The purity of the Sakshi, the purity of Brahman is unsullied by the mind. But then immediately, the experiences of the mind, which have been overwhelming in all my previous years of my life and previous lives as well, takes over. It's not easily dismissible. But if I were to, and so then you can say at that point that the memory of the purity of the self reasserts itself. Normally you are, through the vasanas of the mind, you are subject to the content of the changing of the mind continuously. So that is what memory is. So the memory, for example, is that you were supposed to do something yesterday and you couldn't get to it. So now as you wake up in the morning, you say, oh my gosh, I haven't done that yet. So that's called a memory of a past event, and it leaves continuous impressions in your mind, and so that's called the vasanas. But if you, through the study and through meditation and so on, you are able to free yourself from the clutches of the mind, and you follow the instruction of the Shastra and say, my goodness, I am the very whole. And that is the purity of yourself. But then the memory of the mind takes over and says, what are you talking about? You are just one human being. I don't know. Are you sure? And so this struggle keeps on happening where the purity, where you're not looking at your reflection, but you're not the pratibimba, as we say in Sanskrit, but in the bimba itself, that continuously that changes to a point, and this is what is said. I think we were talking about in the Zoom session, that the vasanas of the truth have to take over the vasanas of the untruth. Samskaras, I would probably use the word samskaras. So the samskaras of the truth, of myself as the original, will slowly, so that is the new set of memories that I have to create, the new language that I have to get used to. And then it becomes more prevalent, so to speak. So that's the way I could answer your question. Good, Chandra and Maithili. I'm happy that you got a lot of different thoughts about it, and that's the idea, that each Upanishad is successful in presenting certain concepts in a very cogent and clear manner, and it's a combination of all of that. Some things you learn from Taittiriya, something you learn from Kathopanishad, and so on. That gives a complete picture. It's the same thing, but it has different aspects to it, clears different doubts about ourselves. So here the doubt in the Kenopanishad was that we make it very difficult because we don't know where to look. In fact, the presence of Atma is the easiest thing that you should never be able to miss. But I have sort of convinced myself, oh, Atma is very difficult to get. Only some Mahatmas were able to do it. I'm just an ordinary person. These are the kind of things that we have. But no, you cannot miss it. How can you miss yourself? So it's just the way of looking at it. Yeah. So yeah, I'm happy that we were able to revise it and come out with some central thoughts. I always find that to be very useful to do. So I'm very happy that you appreciate it. And so with that, it is over. And as you know, I'm going to be away for a couple of weeks. And so I'll give some thoughts to the next set of classes that we will have. I have a couple of ideas. I have not decided on them. But regardless, I think it'll be fun to take up the next set of concepts in Vedantic Insights. And I look forward to seeing you again, I think, on the 30th. Yeah, on the 30th, 2 weeks from today, on the 30th of November. So with that, wishing you all a wonderful set of holidays. And we'll see you again. Thank you. Hari Om.